Good afternoon, everybody. Today is day number 83 at the big house next to the lake. So instead of talking about the NGA, I decided to draw on nearly a decade in Adelaide at the Art Gallery South Australia, because strategically at the Art Gallery South Australia we made a decision to prioritise education and learning from the very beginning. And so the building blocks that we put in place at the Art Gallery South Australia were really led by learning initiatives. So today I'm going to give you a snapshot into about 4 case studies into the Art Gallery South Australia and how learning and education was a driver in giving people permission to think big, giving them permission to feel comfortable, giving them memorable experiences through the eyes, hearts and minds of artists. And essentially, artists were at the core of these programs. So I'm hoping that my PowerPoint is just here. Yes, excellent. About nearly 30 years ago, I trained as a teacher, and I worked as a teacher for 9 weeks and 4 days. On the last day of term 1, I had a job interview for a gallery, and I took it and I ran with it. And I've worked in galleries for about 28 years now, and there was one thing that I've not left behind, and that's all the skills and the toolbox that I gained learning to be a teacher at the University of Newcastle. And I had the great pleasure of actually working as an academic at my alma mater for a number of years, teaching Australian art history. And then sometime down the track, I then worked as both an administrative staff member running the UQ Art Museum and an academic in the University of Queensland School of Art History. And so I've had a foot in both camps, the dark side in learning and academia, and the light side in the gallery world. And today I'm purely going to draw from my experience in the extraordinary light world of the gallery world, working with artists and collections, and how it's so important to put the artist at the heart of what one does. So the extraordinary Art Gallery South Australia, and I pay tribute to my colleague that stepped in for me during my transition. Nice to have you here, Mickey. One of the things that we wanted to achieve at the Art Gallery South Australia is to put artists at the heart of it, and we buried learning and hands-on initiatives in the belly of the institution. So it wasn't relegated to a room or a centre. It was in the middle of an exhibition. So the extraordinary Patricia Piccinini let us do a pop-up hands-on studio in the middle of her exhibition. So instead of 3,000 or 4,000 people being a part of it, about 45,000 people were forced to explore their creativity by embedding this learning initiative in the middle of Patricia Piccinini's exhibition. Then that idea spurred on one of our private benefactors to give us a few $1 million to then embed this into the core activities of the institution. So hands-on learning and artist at the heart of it became a part of our core business. Various incarnations of learning initiatives. So formal learning initiatives were presented Monday to Friday during school terms, and informal learning happened on weekends when people could just drop in. The first year we had about 40,000 people involved in the program, and in year number 8 it was around 200,000. So the great support of Diana Ramsey, who contributed around $5 million over the course of a decade, really transformed the way that audiences found access points into art. And so what's interesting for me is trying to make as many doorways as possible to allow people to connect with art and artists. This was another incarnation of our learning centre from Arab artists in the Torres Strait, where ghost nets were used to create these extraordinary worlds using discarded material. And I've never seen kids go so crazy with so many exciting ideas. But I think the key here was that it's artist-led. Artists are at the heart of it, and their art is part of it. And another great example. One of my co-presenters, I couldn't help but put a slide of Tony Albert's work as part of Dark Heart. Again, we embedded learning initiatives within the exhibition space, and pop-up projects were really part of connecting audiences with artists and artworks. And Sally Smart's installation for Dark Heart used performance as a really important tool to draw people in, and the performance and learning initiatives were integrated from the very outset. And Sally Smart has such a great history of integrating performance into her works, but also extending the performances so they themselves become part of the learning initiatives. Learning also happens outside of formal four walls, and so one of the really powerful initiatives that we introduced at the Art Gallery South Australia was called Teen Takeover. And I give you the disclaimer that this program was inspired by the extraordinary program at the Met in New York, where there were designated times around the year where there was a teen focus. And the Met's inaugural Teen Takeover program I think involved around 20,000 kids. Ours included around 1,000, but it's a complete work in progress. Supported by the Balnaves program, we invited arts organisations from across Adelaide to contribute their artistic input. And so when you came to the Art Gallery South Australia for a Teen Takeover, there were 15 arts organisations like ADT or the South Australian Theatre Company or the Symphony, and they all presented their own unique artistic inputs, and about 1,000 teens had the opportunity, like an expo, to get themselves involved in music, in performance, in dance and visual arts. And it was quite like a Wunderkammer of artistic experiences. And what was really powerful about this was that the 15 art organisations that participated got so much out of it because their network and their connections were made with an audience that wouldn't normally cross their own thresholds. So bringing these arts organisations together within the confines of the Art Gallery South Australia made the arts ecology itself grow and connect with a wider audience. And the collection and using performance and blurring the boundaries between learning and education were really important. And so these are some great examples of how learning, the traditional forms of learning were broken down through performance, but the performance themselves were developed to make sure that curriculum outcomes could be achieved. So I think this blurring of what learning is in the 21st century within the scope of an institution is quite important. And the fabulous Jack Buckskin here with this wonderful performance, again, based on a learning outcome. And more learning in the collection of the Art Gallery South Australia. And other learnings happen. This is an image from Dark Heart where Patricia Piccinini's Sky Whale was the backdrop, where around 2,500 people attended a talk by the artist just under the basket. And this is as we were putting it up. And so learning can happen everywhere. And I finally finished my presentation with a snapshot of me dressed as a pirate, delivering a talk with about 150 young pirates, because learning actually can be fun, but it's serious business when you talk about art, so you have to have the best pirate's outfit to undertake it. So I leave you with me as a pirate, and I look forward to welcoming you over the coming years at the National Gallery, where we've got lots of learning initiatives, because we want to make sure that learning is not just geographically based in Canberra, that learning can happen everywhere with the National Collection. So I look forward over the coming years to tell you more about learning the National Collection and the National Gallery, and how everyone around Australia can be part of learning more about art through the National Gallery. Thank you very much.